What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me, yes, little old me, on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. I like to do the weddings and the corporate parties and the karaoke jams. Yeah, I like it. I like doing it all. Parties are my specialty. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. But for today, let's learn together on What Makes You Smarter. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Easter Sunday, April 12th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, the world celebrates Easter during pandemic. People around the world are celebrating Easter Sunday in a variety of ways, while many are under stay-at-home orders amid the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Pope Francis celebrated Mass inside a mostly empty St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City, while people watched from home on their televisions. Normally, tens of thousands would gather in St. Peter's Square to hear him deliver his, quote, Urbi et Orbi, end quote, speech. Christians in the United States have mostly been preparing to celebrate virtually as well, though some pastors are reportedly planning to hold in-person services in defiance of state restrictions, citing religious freedoms. Other churches plan to hold drive-in services. This is according to the Associated Press and the New York Times. Number 2, U.S. overtakes Italy as country with most coronavirus deaths. The United States on Saturday overtook Italy as the country with the most deaths resulting from the novel COVID-19 coronavirus. Data compiled by Johns Hopkins University shows that there have been at least 20,608 COVID-19 deaths in the U.S., whereas Italy has reported 19,468. Experts believe the U.S. total is an underestimate for various reasons. The increase in new confirmed coronavirus cases and deaths in Italy has slowed in recent weeks, while the U.S. is believed to be near its peak as both countries have implemented lockdowns and encouraged social distancing to curb the spread. But the raw numbers are still staggering. The case fatality rate in Italy remains higher than the more populous U.S., which has more than 3 times the number of total confirmed cases. This is according to CNN and Johns Hopkins University. Number 3, Boris Johnson discharged from hospital. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been discharged from St. Thomas's Hospital in London after he spent a week there receiving treatment for the novel COVID-19 coronavirus. Johnson was admitted to the hospital last Sunday with persistent coronavirus symptoms and was eventually transferred to intensive care when his condition worsened. There, he was administered, quote, standard oxygen treatments, end quote, before moving back to a regular ward a few days later. He'll now reportedly continue his recovery at Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence. Downing Street said Johnson is making good progress. Johnson thanked the hospital staff and the United Kingdom's National Health Service for their efforts. Quote, I owe them my life, end quote, he said. This is according to Reuters and The Guardian. Number 4, all 50 states under disaster declaration for first time in U.S. history. President Trump on Saturday approved a disaster declaration for Wyoming as a result of the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. The decision means that, for the first time in U.S. history, all 50 states are under a federal disaster declaration. Additionally, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, The U.S. Virgin Islands, the Northern Mariana Islands, and Guam have also had disaster declarations approved. Overall, there have been more than 500,000 confirmed cases of the new coronavirus across the country, the most anywhere in the world. A majority of states have issued stay-at-home or shelter-in-place orders to slow the virus's spread, which do appear to be having an effect. This is according to CNN and the New York Post. Number 5, SNL produces Made from Home episode. NBC's Saturday Night Live returned to the airwaves Saturday night after a long absence due to the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. The show's cast and several celebrity guests put together a made-from-home episode in which everyone joined in via a Zoom video call from their respective quarantines. Tom Hanks, who has been recovering from the virus, delivered the opening monologue, while Larry David reprised his role as Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent Vermont, and Alec Baldwin phoned in during the, quote, weekend update, end quote, segment as President Trump. The show also paid tribute to Hal Wilner, SNL's longtime music coordinator, who died this week from COVID-19 complications, as well as the grandmother of cast member Michael Che. This is according to the New York Times and Saturday Night Live. Number 6, IRS begins depositing stimulus checks. The Internal Revenue Service on Saturday announced it sent out the first wave of stimulus checks to Americans amid the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Deposits will continue throughout the week, beginning with people who filed tax returns in 2018 and 2019 and authorized direct deposit. The IRS is encouraging those who haven't filed to do so they can get their money sooner. Under the congressional relief package, individuals with adjusted grosses income under $75,000 will receive $1,200, and couples will get $2,400 plus $500 per child. After the $75,000 threshold, the amount received will be reduced by $5 for every additional $100 in gross income, eventually halting at $99,000. The limits are doubled for couples. This is according to CNN and the Internal Revenue Service. Number 7, Spain to allow some non-essential workers to return to jobs under strict guidelines. The Spanish government on Saturday established guidelines for people returning to work in certain sectors of the economy amid the novel COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Spain has been one of the worst hit countries in the world, but the case rate is slowing, and daily deaths fell to their lowest point since March 23rd on Saturday. Some non-essential workers in construction and manufacturing, therefore, have been allowed by Madrid to head back to their jobs starting Monday. Companies will be required to provide protective equipment to employees who must be spaced more than 6 feet apart. The government has received both internal and external criticism for the decision, though proponents have pointed out that the vast majority of the population remains under strict lockdown. This is according to The Guardian and Reuters. Number 8, Cuomo, de Blasio spar over future of New York City school closures. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, contradicted New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio's earlier announcement Saturday that New York City's public schools will remain closed throughout the rest of the school year. Cuomo said it was merely the mayor's, quote, opinion, end quote, and the decision ultimately warranted input from other authorities throughout the New York metro area and possibly New Jersey and Connecticut as well. Quote, it makes no sense for one locality to take action that's not coordinated with the others, end quote, he said. Cuomo didn't say whether he was aiming to reopen schools, only that a cohesive response was required. The two Democratic leaders have often been at odds over the years. This is according to ABC News and the New York Times. Number 9, Avenatti granted temporary release from prison. Lawyer Michael Avenatti has been temporarily released from the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City because of concerns over the novel COVID-19 coronavirus. A $1 million bond was posted to secure his release. The district judge who granted the release said Avenatti must quarantine for 14 days and submit to a health screening to ensure he has not contracted the virus. He will reportedly spend his confinement at a friend's house in Los Angeles. After 90 days, Avenatti is required to return to prison. The lawyer, who has represented celebrities including Stormy Daniels, was convicted earlier this year for attempting to extort $20 million from Nike. This is according to Time and NBC News. Number 10. NHL player Cave dies at 25. Edmonton Oilers forward Colby Cave died Saturday after suffering a brain bleed earlier in the week. He was 25. Cave had been in a medically induced coma after having surgery to remove a coiled cyst that was causing pressure on his brain. Cave, a Saskatchewan native, had played in 67 career NHL games for the Oilers and the Boston Bruins, tallying 4 goals and 5 assists. In a statement, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman called Cave an, quote, earnest and hardworking player, end quote, who was, quote, admired by his teammates and coaches, end quote, adding that, more importantly, quote, he was a warm and generous person who was well liked by all those fortunate enough to know him, end quote. This is according to Fox News and ESPN. That's 10 things you need to know today for Easter Sunday, April 12th, 2020. It's not all bad news out there. That's leading me to believe that things are going to get better. Yes, they're going to get better. We will prevail. How are you spending your Easter? Are you celebrating Easter? What are you doing today? It's Sunday. I hope you're having a good time with your family and friends. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag WhatMakesYouFamous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for